Dracula, the inspiration for the vampire Dracula, the man who would impale people on giant wooden spikes just for his likings, who would dip his bread in the blood of his victims and would torture in the cruelest ways the animals he would catch in jailed by the Hungarians. Vlad Dracula, a very, very merciless man. Except most of what I said is not true, and he most probably was never called Vlad Dracula, and he was most probably called Vlad Dracula. So, yeah. Eh. Why he was called Vlad Dracula? Well, after his father, called Vlad Dracula. Vlad Dracula was called Vlad Dracula because he wore a necklace around his. I'm gonna talk about it later. Fuck it. Yeah, I'm gonna talk about it later. Yeah. Oh, and he will be also called Vlad the Second, or Vlad the Second Dracula. So I'm gonna refer. Oh yeah, of course, Vlad. The Dracula will be Vlad the Third. So I'm gonna refer to him as Vlad the Impaler because that's the name most all of Romania gives him. Vlad the Impaler, Vlad the Impaler. So yeah, and also because I don't want to you guys to get confused between his father Vlad Dracul and himself Vlad the Impaler. So, who was Vlad the Impaler, the real Dracula? Well, our story begins in 1395. We gotta go back in time before he was even born. You'll see why. So, what happened in 1395? Well, the Battle of Rovine happened, which was the reason why it happened was this guy called Mircea the Old, or Mircea cel Bătrân in Romania. He was called Mircea the Old because it wasn't yet popular in the Romanian principalities to call people by the number. What number? It wasn't popular counting with numbers the the leaders at the times. So you can kinda call him Mircea the First, but it will be wrong because nobody calls him Mircea the First in Romania. We call him Mircea cel Bătrân, which means Mircea the Old, so call him Mircea the Old, please. Yeah, Mircea the Old. Yeah, and of course he will be the voivode, which is the name of kings in Romanian principalities. He was voivode of Wallachia, which was a vassal state to the Ottoman Empire, which means he had to pay tribute and taxes to the Ottoman Empire. And he didn't like that, so he revolted and went to the Sultan and said, "Hey, fuck you." And then the Battle of Rovine started. It's as easy as that. Why is this important? Because he's of royal blood and he is the grandfather of Vlad the Impaler. So, oh, and he was of royal blood because he was the great grandson of Basarab the First, the founder, which Basarab the First is considered to be, like, as his name says, the founder of Wallachia. And Mircea the Old had a son, Vlad Dracul, and Vlad Dracul himself had a son called Vlad the Impaler. Yeah. So, to get into Vlad the Impaler, we also need to look into Vlad Dracul too. So, let's look into Vlad Dracul too, right? Shall we? So, Vlad Dracul, why he was called Vlad Dracul? We get that in a bit. But, he was anti-Ottoman Empire, just like his father Mircea the Old, and so he went to the king of Hungary at the time, Sigismund of Luxembourg, and was like, "Hey, bro, wanna team up?" And Sigismund was like, "Oh hell yeah, fuck the Ottomans," and so he entered the Society of the Dragon because Sigismund invited him in the Society of the Dragon, and also people there would wear red robes and these necklaces with a dragon around, and these like green capes on them. And the reason why he was called Vlad Dracul, because Dracul means the devil in Romanian, and he was called that probably because he had a dragon necklace around his neck, because he was part of the Society of the Dragon, which later in a year later, a few years later, I don't know, he was kicked out of the society because Sigismund found out uh, he wants to conquer some fortresses in Transylvania or something like that. I forgot. But before this happens, he would move in this yellow house, which you can visit nowadays too. Is located in the city of Sighișoara in Romania, in Transylvania, and he would have there two sons. Those sons will be Mircea II and Vlad the Third. Guess who got to be Vlad the Impaler? I'll let you a minute to figure out. I'm not gonna chase Vlad the Third. Yeah. But Wallachia was in a bad place at the time. Why? Because in 4044, nice, 444, kinda nice, bro. The Ottoman Empire made a deal with the Kingdom of Hungary. So Wallachia, because it was between Hungary and the Ottoman Empire, of course, had a thing in this part too, and the Ottomans demand that Dracula gives two of his sons, and so he had to do it. I mean, he had no other choice. He had to give his sons, or who knows what will happen. And so he gave his sons, who were Vlad III, the Impaler, and Radu, which would later become Radu the Beautiful, or Radu cel Frumos in Romanian. So yeah, the Ottomans saw potential in Vlad's eyes, so they decided to try making him a future puppet voivode of Wallachia, because this is what they like to do. Oh, if you look into the history of Wallachia, you'll see a ton of puppet voivodes. Oh my god, a ton, and I mean a ton of puppet voivodes. Oh my fucking god. And in 4047, yeah, in 4047, Vlad Dracula was assassinated by the Boyars, and his son Mircea II, which I mentioned earlier, was forced to dig his own grave, and he was buried alive, where he died of no air, obviously. I mean, what else would he die? I mean, bad conditions in a hole? I guess you don't have good conditions in a hole. Yeah, Mircea II died. And after that, Vladislav II came to the throne of Wallachia, which Vladislav was a dumbass. And the reason why he came to the throne And by the way, he was technically the one who organized the assassination. The reason why he came to the throne, and why he wanted the throne so bad, is because, you see, I forget to tell you, Mircea had a brother called Dan the First, and Dan the First had a brother too, called a son. I mean, a son too, called Dan the Second, and Dan the Second had a son called Vladislav the Second, which is this guy we just talked about earlier. And basically, the branch that goes from Mircea the Old to Vlad the Impaler and so on will be called the dynasty of Draculești, and the branch that goes from Dan the First will be called the Nești, which is obvious where these names came from. Like, the dynasty of Draculești came from Vlad Dracula, because was actually founded by Vlad Dracula, not by Mircea the Old, but historians like to say it started with Mircea the Old, but yeah. And the Nești, obviously, from Dan the First and Dan the Second, I guess, if you will. So the voivode was now Vladislav II, which was technically the kind of I think the third grade, would be called third grade cousin. Anyway, he was the cousin of Vlad the Impaler, of course. Yeah. But Vladislav's reign will not last for long, because our great friend Vlad the Impaler will come with a giant Ottoman army and will take the throne for himself, and he will be the new voivode of Wallachia. But not for long, because after that the boyars kind of betrayed him, and Vladislav became the new voivode, and Vlad the Impaler was forced to run off in Moldavia. In Moldavia, he met the child of the son, basically the son. I'm gonna call him the son of the current voivode of Moldavia at the time, in 4049, which his name was Stephen the Great, which it's a very big figure in Romania. Is known as one of the biggest figures in Romania. Maybe I'm gonna make a video about him in the future. Oh, and he was also called Saint Stephen the Great after his death, but he wasn't so great at the time, because he was only a child. So yeah, those two became very good friends, and they will be even called kind of like cross brothers or something. That doesn't work in English. Fuck. Anyway, but in 4051, Stephen's father will be assassinated, and so Stephen and Vlad will be forced to fly into Transylvania. Well, in Transylvania, they will seek refuge to John Hunyad, or how the fuck do you want to call him? I don't know how to call him. I'm gonna call him John Hunyad. In Romanian, we call him Iancu de Hunedoara, or Ioan de Hunedoara. Depends who asked. So, yeah, John Hunyad. They seek refuge to John Hunyad. Yeah. And would also meet his son, called Matthew Corvinus, or Matthias Corvinus, or Mattia Corvin, or I'm gonna call him Matthew Corvinus. Oh, and in 1456, Vlad the Impaler will come storm from Transylvania, Wallachia, and Of course, Vladislav will be killed by one of the uh, traitor traitor boyars who would betray him and kill him. Yeah, that's why you never trust boyars or friends, I guess. Yeah, yeah. So Vlad becomes the new voivode again. Jesus fucking Christ, this man is voivode a lot of times, isn't he? So what's the first thing he will do? The first thing he will do is basically impaling the boyars who killed his brother and his father in multiple ways, not just impaling actually. And will also call in the law that everyone who does any type of crime will be impaled, which is very cool if you ask me. Yeah. And of course, he was just like his father and grandfather, anti-Ottoman. So he would betray the very own man who would help him get to the throne of Wallachia. And he decided that Wallachia would no more pay tribute to the Ottomans, which angered the first, the second, sorry, Mehmed II, oh fuck, sorry, which would anger Mehmed II of the Ottoman Empire, which is also the guy who conquered Constantinople, and he decided he would storm Wallachia with over 100,000 men and 75 ships. Meanwhile, Vlad's army was about 30,000 men or something like that, which isn't a lot. It's not a lot. Yeah, it's not a lot at all. At all. But he was more readier than ever. So what Vlad did is that he would poison the empire from the inside while they were storming Wallachia. He ordered that all the villages that were in the way of the Ottomans that will be left alone by the locals, and the locals will come help in the battle instead. And he would also poison all the water in the barrels and in the fountains, and he would attack uh, the the food providers of the army. And not just that, he would also attack the water providers of the army after the Ottomans decided they would get water from outside of Wallachia, from refusing to drink more water from inside because they were scared there would be more poisonous water. And on June 16th, 1462, Vlad the Impaler decided he would wear clothes of an Turk himself, and he would go and assassinate Mehmed. But instead of that, he killed the wrong person and confused the tents. So he didn't really kill him, but he was near. He was near. I almost killed him. Yeah, which is very cool if you ask me. That's cool, I guess. Yeah, very cool. But oh yeah, after that I forgot to say, Mehmed. It is said Mehmed would leave with his troops Wallachia back in Istanbul with shame. Well, that this story says he left with shame. He left. Okay, he left with shame. Let's with shame, I guess. If you want to believe that, yeah, with shame of himself or something. Yeah. But he will not be. Oh fuck, my voice. he will not be so peace, so in peace, because his brother Radu the Beautiful will will be freed by the Ottomans to cause chaos in Wallachia, and so he technically did. He basically caught a lot of boyars' attention, a lot of boyars on his side, and he got the boyars to be against Vlad. So yeah, so Vlad had to leave Wallachia and go to Transylvania to seek help from Matthew Corvinus. But uh, the first thing Matthew did is arrest him. Unfortunately, it is said that Matthew betrayed Vlad because he got these because some Saxon Transylvanians came to Matthew and showed him this this exact letter they said they found, which is basically reads that Vlad the Impaler will betray Transylvania and will team up with the Ottomans, which most of the historians agree this letter was actually fake, and it was faked by by those Saxons, so Matthew will betray Vlad, which makes sense if you think about it. I guess. Yeah, Saxons I guess don't like Vlad. I did not like Vlad. So Matthew was so upset when he got this news that Vlad will uh, betray him. Betray him with yeah. Not really. You get what I mean. And he was so upset he would start a whole propaganda anti-Vlad, which is where the idea of Dracula by Bram Stoker came from these certain propaganda drawings and such. And yeah, but he would be free in 1475 with the help of Stephen the Great. Ah, they really are brothers, don't they? Well, cross brothers, or how the fuck do you want to name them? And he will become voivode for a third time. Before he, after he will take the place from Basarab Laivta. And also he later will be assassinated in 1476 in Bucharest. So basically he ruled 3 times. First time in 1448, the second time around between 1456 and 1462, and the third time in 1476, and he lived between the years 1431 and 1476, being assassinated in Bucharest around a forest in December. Conclusion. The big conclusion about Vlad Dracula. He wasn't the man the pop culture tends to show him as. He wasn't a bloodthirst demon or something like that. He was no vampire. He was just a man, a king of his own kingdom. Even though it wasn't called a kingdom and he wasn't called a king, but you get the illusion. With his own kingdom, who tried to protect his kingdom from any attackers that would come. He was just a normal king with brutal ideas for a brutal time. He wasn't actually that brutal for his time. He was nowhere near of what other people would do in other places. Yes, he would impale people on spikes, but other people will just do more horrible things, more horrible tortures. So many tortures I can't even remember all of them and how cruel they were. So Vlad isn't the man that is portrayed in the media. He is a man who actually did all the things he done for his country, for his principality, and for his kingdom. He was a big man, and it makes sense why he's seen as a hero in Romania. Even though it would not really fix things in Romania if he would come back into life, it's complicated. So this was the history about Vlad the Impaler, Vlad the Third.